Well, welcome back to Servant Leadership Library, where we check out the stories, the strategy, and let's be honest, the occasional miracle behind true impactful leadership. I'm your host, Nicholas Paulukow, CEO of One, your friendly neighborhood managed IT and cybersecurity firm. Yes, we keep your systems patched and your data safe, but today we're diving into a different kind of protection, safeguarding people, purpose, and the communities that need it most. And speaking of impact, pull up a chair because today's guest has nearly 30 years of nonprofit superpowers tucked neatly between compassion and no-nonsense execution. We're joined today by Tammi Morris, the executive director of Faith Friendship Ministries, right here in Lancaster County, PA. Tammi is kind of a leader who can walk into a crisis, bring clarity before coffee gets cold, and somehow inspire everyone around her to rise to the occasion. She's built her career on organization turnarounds, advocacy, and creating sustainable growth while championing dignity, stability, and belonging for vulnerable adults. In short, if servant leadership had a superhero cape, Tammi probably designed it, patched it, and distributed it to the entire team. So let's jump in and explore how leadership driven by heart, humanity, and hope can transport not just organizations, but entire communities. Tammi, welcome. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. And
Wow,
you're
so excited to
amazing.
be here. Oh, thank you. Thank you. All the glory to God. I can't take credit. I just
I
can't.
love it. I love it. Well, for the listeners that don't know as much about you that I do, so could you kind of tell the listeners a little bit about your journey into kind of nonprofit, maybe into leadership, like how that began?
Sure. So I was raised in poverty in Syracuse, New York. I'm originally
Hmm.
from New York, but I've been here for 30 years. So
Wow.
I've been accepted by the Pennsylvania community that I affectionately call Pennsyltucky.
Oh,
And
wow, I like
I
that.
I do that not as it's a compliment, right? So when I moved from Syracuse, New York to York, Pennsylvania, um, I saw a real sense of community. I saw a sense of family, and people weren't just rushing by and trying to get you out of their way. There was just
Hmm.
a slowing down that I think my soul needed at the time, right? And I was really young when
Wow.
I came here. I was only
Okay.
19. But anyway, I was raised in poverty. Mom was mentally ill. Dad wasn't in the picture. I'm a twin. I have a twin brother. His name is Anthony. He is 23 minutes older than me, but I have the big mouth, so nobody knows it, right?
I love
Um,
it.
and my mom suffered, and it was in a time when you didn't talk about mental illness, you didn't talk about abuse, you didn't talk about those things, you hid them, right? And
Yeah.
so my mom was medicated and all the stuff, but she wasn't cared for, right? The whole person wasn't cared for. So Tony and I got the shrapnel of that, and it was foster homes and abuse and just all kinds of things, right? I could just go down the list. But at some point, someone recognized in me a talent for seeing the trap doors ahead. I, in a state of hypervigilance as a survival tool, God, unbeknownst to me, was using that to help organizations. And what I noticed really on in my career, and I stumbled into it, right? I really stumbled into it. But what I noticed was that a lot of nonprofit organizations had really great missions,
Hmm.
but they almost always, even at 20 years old, were operating at a grassroots functional level. And
Right.
that made them extremely vulnerable, right? And wasteful spending, redundancy in services, not stepping up to who they're called to be in their community, right? And so I started picking away at that one thing at a time, negotiating contracts, looking at staff training, you name it. I would go into every nook and cranny of an organization. And guess what, Nick? When I went in, I was a high school dropout with my GED, with a year and a half of college, had no idea what a P&L was. The first time someone said P&L, I was like deer in the headlight, right? So I learned everything as I went, but there was a tenacity in me that I didn't even understand. It was, I am going to bring justice. I saw where justice and care wasn't brought to me, Tony, and my mom. Um, and I'm going to bring it because I saw what it was like being put in foster homes and forced to sleep in an unweatherized attic without
Right.
winter clothes in Syracuse, New York. And I was going to be the voice for the voiceless. Now, Psalm 82:4 talks about us rising up for the weak, the poor, the oppressed, and the fatherless, right? I didn't know scripture at that time, but that was in me. God put that in me. Instead of being bitter about what happened, I wanted to make things better around me. Now,
because you could have went another direction, right? You could have said, "Oh,
I
poor
could.
me. Oh, this, oh, that." And what an amazing, amazing inspiration to those that maybe are downtrodden right now to think that there is hope and positivity outside of this
Absolutely.
loneliness, right?
Yeah.
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 You're
And,
hitting home because I came from my father had a lot of mental health growing up. Now we had a strong family around that, but it is unexplained right? Like it wasn't spoken about,
yeah.
but it's kind of like, your functioning mental health, right, issues, and it puts a lot of wear on a family, but it can make you stronger too. So I relate because I call it kind of like that fighter,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
knock me down, I'm getting back up.
That's right. And, in my early years in nonprofit leadership, I rose through the ranks pretty quickly. And my approach was, see, here's where God can use brokenness to bring him glory while he's healing you and serving others. Right. That's my life. That's Tammy. Is when I was in the first big nonprofit, it was $32 million year base operating budget.
Okay.
How many locations? 8 locations, 115 staff, connections to state departments and federal and local funding, et cetera. A lot of reach, right? Big footprint. Yeah. And I was terrified that someone would find out where I came from, who I was. And I didn't even lie about it. So why was I terrified? I was an open book, right? I'm one of those people that hides in plain sight by being the life of the party. And I didn't know that about me at the time, right? I'm truly an introvert. When you and I get done.
Holy Spirit working in you,
Yes, yes. But I would hide in plain sight by being very performative, right? I had to learn everything about everything because if I didn't know it,
you had to overwork everyone.
Yeah. I did. And when I look back at myself as a leader then and look at myself as a leader now, you want to know what the primary difference is? Yeah. I am now who I pretended to be.
Ooh, that's
so a lot of my career was unpacking who I was, and God was healing and transforming me and growing me and bringing people alongside because we do life in community, right? We're better together. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I did. But I'm one of those people that believes that it's important to be corrected, to be rebukable, to be teachable, because there's such beauty in going, hey, I don't have to believe that anymore. That's not true, or that's not best or highest. So through the years, I served in 6 different nonprofits in 30 years. So my tenure is 5 to 6 years. And what I learned was I'm the girl that goes in, grabs the low hanging fruit, sees all the things that doesn't work, identifies the trap doors, fixes systems, and helps organizations grow up by fixing the things that don't work, bringing the right team in, and building the right culture, right? So I started leadership in I'm going to the 1900s. Officially started in leadership in 1999. Okay, I had some other leadership roles before that, but that's where I see it as starting.
Okay.
And at that time, the ED, the CEO, right? What they said went, and it was a top down, and they held all the power, and you had to make them happy. You had to be their right hand girl or guy, and then you would climb up the ladder fast, right? And that's how it was. So that's what I did. I made sure my bosses looked really good, right? By saving hundreds of thousands of dollars in wrongly negotiated copier contracts. I mean, it was low hanging fruit. Like, how come you guys can't see you're wasting money here, right? And to the girl who had to stand in the food line and who stole food from my neighbors, wasting money is pretty important to me, right?
Yeah, right.
Because it means less people are getting loved and served.
Right.
That's injustice, right? Even if unintentional. So I served in workforce development, economic development, affordable housing, homeless mothers and children, building at Habitat, affordable housing. And now my most recent assignment by God is at Faith Friendship Ministries in Mountville, a 73-bed personal care home that's state licensed and regulated. And all of our individuals, oh, Nick, you have to come meet them. They're precious. 73 individuals that have complicated and persistent mental illness. Like they're literally my mom, right? But God brought me here in a time after I had brain surgery in 2021, and the brain surgery showed me what it was like to have your brain betray you. Through the years, I've served in housing, affordable housing, homelessness, um, workforce and economic development, and all of the arms. So think of all the people groups, the vulnerable groups that might be served, right? But in 2021, I had brain surgery for a rare brain disease that struck me right in the middle of COVID, out of nowhere, not well researched, don't know why I got it. I just go big or go home, right? If you're going to get something, just get something big. But what was interesting about this disease, Nick, is that trigeminal and glossopharyngeal neuralgia. They are brainstem diseases. And those particular nerves that I just mentioned, okay, 5, 9, 10, and 11 in the brainstem. So think of Tammy's computer, right?
Yeah.
Was misfiring, was sending signals to my mouth that created pain that was likened to electrocution, burning, and stabbing. Now,
Really?
these diseases are called the suicide disease because some 20 to 25% of people, after the medication is refractory and all the things don't work, attempt suicide. So it's a serious disease, and it's suffering that I will never be able to put into words. Never. But isn't it interesting that the very thing that God uses is the disease that I got, and it affected my mouth? My mouth, my throat, the very thing that
Really?
God uses. Yes. So I had brain surgery in January 21 in California. My husband and I went there. And at the time I was working for Habitat for Humanity in York County.
Okay. Okay.
And I had the brain surgery. And for the first time in my life, I knew what it was like to have my brain betray me. I knew what it was like. Nick, I was actually hearing Mozart, and there was no Mozart. It was the medication that they had to give me to save my life that caused
Wow.
that. I had auditory hallucinations.
Wow.
So something snapped in me. Something was like, wait a minute here. Maybe I've been looking at mental illness wrong, right? So God was transforming me. God was healing me in this area that I didn't even know was there. Now, this is a really long story and I won't go into it, but the bottom line is God brought me to Faith Friendship Ministries at the precise time that I could be love, compassion, advocacy to these beautiful, but
Wow.
very vulnerable and suffering individuals. And when I first came here, I was like, am I being demoted? Like, why are you bringing me here, God? This organization's on its last leg, which should be perfect for me, right? And I didn't understand it until I had my first interaction with a resident. And my heart broke and I was like, God, I'm so sorry. Forgive me. Show me how to love them and serve them the way they deserve, not the way they can afford or the way people see them.
And
God,
how did you
forgive me.
how did you you said you were called, like, what, we all feel like we're pulled in kind of directions, right? Like,
Yeah.
even every morning myself, I'm like, you know if this what you want me to be doing? If not,
Yeah.
like, tell me otherwise. From your experience, like, what pulled you there? Like, what door opened, or what did you see that brought you to each of these organizations?
So when I left Habitat in March of 21, it was because my husband and I had decided that I was not ready to go back to work. My type A
Okay.
personality was treating this like, I don't know, a hip replacement. I'll be back in 8 weeks. It wasn't practical. I needed time to heal and rest.
I
But
see.
if I back up just a tiny bit, in 2017, when I was just starting to see some of the fruit of the work of the transformation at that nonprofit, I got a phone call from a recruiter, unsolicited, not open to work.
Uh,
And he called me and said, you were recommended by someone in the Catholic community as being a perfect option for Faith Friendship. Their founders are retiring and they need a new leader.
really?
And I was so good about I was like, oh, thank you so much for thinking of me. What an honor. And I'll pray about it and blah, blah, blah. And then Nick, here's something servants need to know or leaders need to know. you're going to have those moments where you are absolutely not going to want to do something. And it's
Yeah.
probably the best thing, right?
Yeah.
So I go towards resistance. I try to find out why it's there. So anyway, I hung up that phone with that recruiter, and you know what I said? I'm ashamed, but I'm not ashamed anymore. I was. It needs to be said. I said I was raised by crazy. I'll be damned if I'm going to run it.
Mm.
So what that did was that showed me that thing inside of me that prevented me from being the full and total leader that God wanted me to be, which is a servant. What did Jesus do? He took off his outer cloth and he washed their feet.
Right.
The
He
lowest is
served.
the highest, and the
Yeah.
highest is
It's
the
that
lowest.
humbleness. And I think
Yeah.
we lose that humility sometimes. I don't know what, I have it as you're speaking, like other things are coming in to my mind, right? And there was something nagging at me today. And I'm like, nah, that would be like really humbling myself if I really did that. Like,
Go for it.
nah. And then I'm saying my prayers and it comes in again. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm kind of praying for like what I should do. And I'm like, why am I ignoring it? Well, it's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and as soon as you kind of realize, like, there's only one person that's going to judge me in the end, but it's hard. We're human beings, right? And
It
so
is.
you
It
have to
is.
be willing to be rejected. But
Yes.
that's hard. That's
Yeah.
really, 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 really hard.
Yeah. And we
Yeah.
have to redefine success, right? And we should talk
Yeah.
about that at some point. But
Oh, I have a hard
so
one with that.
ditto, same, getting better. But so I knew when I hung up that phone, I knew that God was doing something in me. So fast forward to 2020, I get the brain disease, suffer for 9 months, almost die several times, didn't, thank God. And and then I have the brain surgery. But in that time, God's transforming my heart. And I really dug into theologically and psychologically, what do I believe about mental illness? And what I learned was that there was a part of me that believed, while I would never have said it and wasn't forced to, now I'm forced to confront. That's another thing good leaders do. They confront what they need to confront, right?
Mhm.
And what I realized was that I had believed, a tiny part of me believed, even though my mom was saved, we were reconciled, we had a great relationship by the time she
Okay.
died. I believed that if she was stronger, we wouldn't have suffered so much.
Mm.
So, and that's a thread in my life. Be stronger, be
Right.
tenacious, don't give up, right? And and that's not true. My mother
Right.
suffered deeply, was abused in ways I would never even repeat. And she did the best that she could. And she
Good. Yeah.
loved us wildly. Like she
Right.
extravagantly loved us. And the fact that she didn't die was a miracle. Right.
Right.
So God changed my mind. Right. We renew our mind, and renewing, it's getting a renew. It's not believing other things that you believed before. It's letting him give you what
Right. It's
he
that
has
letting
as
go.
truth. It
Yeah.
is. And so when he brought me to Faith Friendship, I was like, I thought I was going to stay home. Why do you want me to go in a battle zone? They need so much. I'm exhausted. I can barely walk. I was almost 70 pounds heavier than I am from the medicine.
Wow.
It
Wow.
hurt to walk. Like I'm
Right.
literally trying to recover. And when I had those first interactions with the residents, God, I'm so sorry. I repent. This is an honor. This is sacred and holy work. I'm so sorry I was a jerk about it and didn't trust you for that 5 minutes. Show me how to love them how they deserve, not how they're seen and how they can afford. God, show me. They are the most vulnerable, right? Show me how to do this. I don't know how to do it. And from that moment on till now, this has been the hardest, the most difficult, sometimes painful, challenging, and stressful, using that word lightly, right? Position I've ever held, but it's been the most sacred and holy.
Wow. What you speak about, which is pretty amazing, is like interacting, that we all say like this work, like we hear this work life balance all the time, right? And the reality is you're living your life, right? Like I say to people, like, listen, my work and my business are the same. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a purpose driven of serving. If I'm utilizing that in work or personal, I don't know how they would be different, right?
They're not. They're not.
Right. And so it's fascinating to hear you speak about that in that regard, and
Yeah.
hearing about kind of like this letting go. I think many people hold on to things so much that it really causes them to not really ever live their life or see their passions. But you kind of listen through those experiences, and a lot of it hits home because certain things growing up are very similar.
Sure.
And it's very fascinating to find the same passion and energy from it. But you're constantly wondering, like, is this the serving I'm supposed to be doing, right? And
Yeah.
so having talk about this, you're doing a lot of this seemingly on your own, right? Has there been any mentors that have given you guidance? Talk a little bit about that, because we hear a lot of people are like, well, having a mentor is kind of like a failure. And to me, it seems like an opportunity,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Yeah. No, no, no,
you
no,
can't
no.
do it all on your own.
No, 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 no. So when I first started in the nonprofit world, God just kind of organically gave me mentors, right?
Mm,
And then as I grew in my career, I started to notice that there was a lot of stuff I didn't know because God kept putting me in new industries within the nonprofit. So every
mm.
time I went to a new nonprofit, I had to learn a new industry.
Yeah.
Right. And that's exciting for me. Like that's good for my personality, not a problem. And everything it piles on, right? Previous learning and builds this beautiful
Mm,
picture of how you can serve, right? So it was probably in 2008 when I got the idea I actually need a mentor. I need a
mhm.
spiritual mentor, how to do well in business, right? Because that's when I started in Christian ministry, not just the
Right.
501c3. And I had someone in the community that was political, so I could understand the political
Mm,
landscape and build relationships there. Um, and the spiritual mentor was also like an accountability person, right? Someone who
right.
knew me deeply. And then I had an industry mentor. So, whatever
Mm,
industry I was in, I'd go to the best of the best in that and say, hey, will you take me under your wing? Because there's a lot here I don't know. And I don't want the organization to have to fund my learning. Right. And to a degree, when you come in, the organization does spend time with a CEO or ED. In the first
right.
couple of years, it's more teaching and acclimating and,
Right.
and
Right. Right.
onboarding. A CEOs have the longest onboarding ever. I don't care what anybody says, right? And so I wanted to, one of the things that has been so instilled in me is being a good steward of the resources that God's entrusted to us, because I will stand before him someday.
Mm,
And I want to be able to say, I listened to you. I
right.
did what you told me to do. And it took me a while, and my mentors helped me do this. It took me a while to get the whole if it does this, it succeeds. And if it does this, it fails. And one of my mentors, political person, loved dearly, still friends with them. Um, Also a believer, understood the industry I was in. So just a great resource, said to me, Tammy, you have to obey, and the outcome is up to God.
Mm.
Success is obedience.
I
That's
was
it.
just going to ask you that. What do you define success to be? That is,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it.
And it's challenging, right? Especially when you're going through challenging times, like the organization that I lead right now. There's a million different reasons, but we're struggling. And
Right.
I could do a 4-hour conversation on that. But the reality is that if I just do the last thing or the thing that God's telling me to do, he shows me he's in it every single time. And he
It's
shows
kind of the
me,
old age of St. Francis said, just start by doing, right? And then you're
yes.
doing the possible, and then all of a sudden you're doing impossible, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that. Now, how do you balance like compassion, and like tough decisions, right? Like you come in as a turnaround leader, or you said that, right? Like you come in as a turnaround, and I'm sure tough decisions have to be made. So how do you like marry that with like the compassion aspects of the group you're leading?
So I believe that, and you said this well earlier, I'll say it a little differently. I believe that how I treat myself is how I'm going to treat other people. Right.
Mm,
So if I believe that it's okay to make mistakes and it's an opportunity to grow and people have the capacity and generally want to, right? And I
mm,
approach tough conversations with compassion, seeing the person first, and the place of accountability is something that just needs to be improved and not something against them, then it goes a lot better. It's about building culture. It's about saying, hey, I care about you and I believe you want to do the best. Here are some things that are happening overall that don't work, and we need to make
mm.
some changes. Would you partner with me in doing that?
Right.
I don't have
Yeah, I
all
mean,
the
you're kind of
answers.
basically saying be open and honest because some people feel like that's conflict, right? And I'm like, well, being kind is being direct, polite and direct,
Correct.
but
Correct.
not being polite and direct is actually the harmful part, which people
Sure.
seem to reverse. Would you agree to that?
Absolutely. I can tell you that 99% of my conversations are about looking at things through an honest and humble perspective, right? Most of the challenges in organizations are people either having an agenda or being afraid to look at things honestly,
Mm,
right? And it's not personal. It's just not personal. It may be personal for you and you may need to personally change. But what I
right.
try to do is I try to model being humble, being correctable, being honest, right?
Mm,
Um, I'm not afraid of those things anymore. I'm not afraid of somebody telling me I didn't do it well and there's a better way to do it.
right.
I'm
Like you're
not.
you're confident in yourself, right? And who
I'm
you are.
confident.
Yeah.
I'm actually not confident in myself. I'm confident
Ah.
in God's ability to complete the work that he started in me. That's what I'm confident in.
Okay.
And that's where it begins and ends. And I'm also confident in the fact that he loves me. And that I saw a meme on Facebook. My kids call me a Facebook mom. I saw a meme on Facebook the other day that said God factored in every one of your dumb decisions when he called you and saved you. And I was like, oh, that's me, right? That's me. So I try to love people. I try to believe the best about them. I try to give them a path to correction into fruit, right? Because that's what we're looking
Right.
for. We're looking for fruit.
Right.
And I've had one person in the time that I've been here literally rip up that plan, if you will, right? It's a get well plan. Let's do better together plan. Rip it up and say, I'm not interested. I am the way I am, and that's it, right? So you have to be prepared for people who don't want to go deep. If you
Right.
don't want to
Well,
go
and I
deep,
mean, and Jesus said that too, right? Like, hey,
yeah,
he sent his disciples and apostles and said, hey, go knock on the doors and kind of spread the good news. And those that reject you, just clean your feet off and move on. You're not going
yeah,
to save everyone. And that kind of is what reminds me of when you're saying that, right? Like, we're
right.
not all going to fit it. They're not bad people, just they're just not fitting in with kind of the mission of
Sure, sure.
Huh. What do you think, like, you've in leadership for 30 years, right? Like, what do you think leaders often get wrong when they're trying to guide through an uncertainty?
I think isolation. I think
Mm,
isolation, and I think that's pride driven, and I think it's
okay.
dangerous, right?
Mm,
When I get in trouble or have something I don't know how to deal with, I start reaching out, right? And
mm,
and I have a network, so it's not like I'm starting from scratch.
right.
But we went through in August of 2022. I don't know if you know about this, and I won't go into it too much unless you prompt me to. But 11 months into my tenure here, I was just starting to build some cash pipeline, right? Because there's the deficit and not a lot of relationships and very insular for many years. I'm just starting to make some headway, just starting to get in the community. And as I'm presenting to the county commissioners, requesting money for a particular project to help improve quality of life here, right? I get a phone call and I find out that Faith Friendship is about to face the biggest crisis of its entire 23-year history. And it
Wow.
was massive. And I have to say, in my almost 30 years in nonprofits, I had never experienced this type of crisis. It was devastating. I have no idea what to do with this. But you know what my first response was? And I'm so grateful for it. I'm so grateful for it. It's muscle memory, right? Leaders have to have the right muscle memory, and that has to be developed over time. My muscle memory is God, you knew this was coming, and I need you to be with me. Give me the spirit and the words and the approach that you want me to have because I got nothing, Papa. I got
I get
nothing.
nothing.
Give me embezzlement any day. Give me, and I just reached up. I looked up and I said, you will supply all of our needs according to your riches and glory. And your word says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Well, I need legal knowledge. I need trauma response. You just go down the list. And he did. He showed up supernaturally in ways that I don't even know if I could communicate well today. So that's what I do is I look up and then I look around. I go, God, who do you have in this community that could come alongside me? And God, who do you have in this community that you want me to come alongside? How can I serve? And one of my heart's desires is that every person who comes into my office or that I interact with, they feel seen and valued by the time our conversation's done. And whatever God might want to say to them, that I be faithful in saying it to them. And, I was fear-based for many years, growing up the way that I did, feeling like I was inadequate, that if people really knew who I was, they wouldn't want anything to do with me. So the imposter syndrome, there was, so, but God has worked that out over the years that the only fear that I have is the fear of the Lord.
Mm.
Right.
Well, and you talk about like that, and you talk about like practicing, like how do you practice servant leadership, like environments sometimes that are like high, like high intense resources are often limited, like you're working through those problems. How do you balance that? How do you lead through that? And I probably already know the answer kind of from what we talked about, but from like you might have that confidence or you said the understanding of it's going to be okay, but how do you lead all the other people that don't have that same understanding that you do through these
Yeah.
kind of challenges?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, when that crisis hit in 2022, that was a perfect example because we didn't know if we'd be able to stay open. There was
Mhm.
criminal and legal stuff going on.
Oh, wow.
Um, and God, I remember saying to God on the way home one night, I was like, God, I need you to show me how to do this well because I can't control what happened before I got here.
Mm,
But God, we need to show, I always say the world, right? But we need to show the world how to do a crisis well with you at the helm.
mm,
That we can't change that, but we can demonstrate this.
mm,
And so initially, I have to tell you, Nick, when I found out about the crisis and then God led my team and I to investigate, and it led to this huge criminal thing because of our investigation, right? We
wow,
were like
wow.
we were like the persistent widow and the unjust judge. We went after that, right? We just dogged it. We just did not give up. Seek the truth and pursue justice for these precious residents. And in that process, there were a lot of times where we got hit. It's kind of like, oh, you guys found this out. You guys did what's right. Here's a provisional license, or here, you can lose $300,000 in income a year. Or like there were consequences. There were consequences to doing the right thing. But I know when we do what God tells us to do.
Right.
And so sitting with the staff, there was some staff, and this was hard for me. And I felt ill equipped at some points, but there was some staff that were angry at me because I was saying we needed to pray for the abuser
Oh,
and
okay.
lift that family up, right? And I'm that girl because of what God saved me from and forgiven me of and done for me and never left me or forsaken me. I'm like, whatever you've done, you are in the grips of the enemy. And I don't want anybody to go to hell. If God doesn't want anybody to go to hell, how do I get to want someone to go to hell? So my point to this is to say that I had to learn how to meet those people that were deeply wounded by this in a different way,
Right.
right? Not everybody is like, oh, this is awful. Oh, God's going to get us through it. Oh, we just need to be steadfast. I go into automatic in crisis. And I had to slow down with those people and say things like, I'm so sorry you're hurting. I am so sorry that you are experiencing this with someone that you thought you could trust.
Right.
I, you know, and God taught me how to do that and put some people alongside of me. It's trauma response, right? Not everybody experiences a trauma the same way. And so I've learned a lot in that. And
And
that was
how do you handle like you lead with such passion for your faith. How where does criticism come into that? Are you ever criticized for that? It's the same as like Jesus, right? Like he's sending his medicine criticized all the time.
yeah, yeah.
How have you navigated that, especially in organizations like that aren't necessarily faith-based,
Great question.
that have a mission. How do you navigate that?
Yeah. So I believe, the Apostle Paul said, know your audience. When in Rome, right? Be like the Romans. So, God, every time I go into an environment, I say, God, show me how to tell the story to this audience in a way that they'll hear it. Right. So, you gave me freedom to talk about my faith. So, you can see it's just smothered and covered like Waffle House there, right? Um, but when I'm with someone who is at a different place, because we're all on a journey, right? Think of the
Right.
continuum. We're all at different places. I just ask for wisdom and try to listen more than I talk. And I love to share stories. So I'm not like saying, okay, John 3:16 says you should, right? I tell them stories of God's faithfulness in my life, and that will spark interest. And even if they don't believe in the God part of it, they can't deny they can't deny the
Right.
testimony of it, right?
Well, and they can't
So
because
I don't want
it's
to be
you, it's not them.
exactly, and
Right.
I don't want to be offensive or overbearing. So I'm very cautious before I go into a conversation. I ask God to give me wisdom. I try to know the audience, the purpose of the conversation, and I try to honor them because I want to open doors, not close doors or shut people down.
Right.
And
And it is
sometimes, Nick,
amazing
I
the
do.
journey that people are on, right? I,
Yes,
I was
yes.
recently in a professional event, and this man connects with me, and you're just trying to ask some questions, and you wonder how God is acting in that way as like kind of a witness, right? And and we started talking about faith, and he goes, "I'm so sad. My wife is now an atheist."
Oh,
And how do I do this? He goes, I'm 70 some years old, and and I go, does that hurt your heart? And he goes, it hurts it more than what you'll ever believe. And so it's just amazing what you get into,
yeah,
and who he puts in front of you
yeah,
to
yeah.
help, right?
It's exciting. It's exciting. And I think one of the things that God has taught me over the years, I wasn't very good at in the beginning because I was so excited about Jesus. I wanted to tell everybody all the supernatural testimonies and you'll love him too. And I was just too much, right? Little bit too much. And what God taught me over the years was that some plant the seed, some sow the seed, some water it, but it's God who brings the harvest. So he taught me how to slow down, how to spend that time with them and trust that whatever our interaction is, that it was enough for God
Right,
and that he's got them. I wanted everybody to be saved and I just try to see the person. See, that's the thing
yeah,
with me. They never saw me.
right.
They
Well, and
it
I think that's
was
the humbleness too, right? Like I realize in an interaction, having a conversation with someone, that this priest that we all knew had this impact in all of us, but never sold the message. Like similar to what you're saying, like I'm like, how did he have so much patience? Right? Like I don't have that patience. Like how can I practice that? And the man said he saw me one time and invited me to come to church and never said anything again. And he goes, 10 years later, I
yes.
called to show up there and he was still there. And he said, welcome back. I'm like, how do you have that kind of patience? But
Yeah.
it's going to what you're saying is that we're problem solvers and fixers. And I guess we're not there to fix anything. We're just there to be the narrator, I guess, the guy.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
how do
and the
you
presence.
you got a lot of stuff always going on, right? Like you're the fix it, right? So like how do you fill your cup back up? Like how do you you're pouring so much into others. How do you
Yeah.
fill your cup back up?
So I've made the mistake, like every passionate leader, and emptied my cup, broke the cup, lost the cup, over the years, can't find the cup, gave the cup away. I've done that, especially early in ministry leadership, right? Of a 501c3 that was faith-based. And what I've learned over the years is that I need to put first things first. And the first thing is God, my relationship with God, getting into his presence, whether it's worship or hiking or kayaking or those things that I love to do. Also spending time with my family and my really close friends so that I can just be present as me, right? Because I do show up every day as Tammy and I can't separate Tammy at home, from Tammy here, and Tammy at church. I am the same everywhere. And it's wonderful because I've tried to be other people and I'm no good at it. So when when I make time for the things that matter, I am very careful to listen to, how am I right now? Do I need 10 minutes just to walk and take a deep breath? Do I need to connect with a resident because I'm feeling burdened by all of the woes of my role? You know, have I connected with my kids because they're a high and holy calling too? What about my friends? And so I make sure that I don't overschedule. I leave room to breathe, but that I invest in the things that fill my cup. Right. And that's a priority for me. And I got much better at it. Full disclosure, I got much, much, much better at it after the brain surgery. Because I'm telling you, that rocked my world. Every day I faced death for 9.5 months, every single day. But I knew, even though the disease was attacking my face, what I would do, Nick, is pull over on 83 or go into a bathroom at Ross, lay on the floor, curl up in a ball to get through it and worship God. That's what I did. So there was a peace in the middle of hell that God gave to me. And once I felt it at that level, I was like, I don't want to lose that ever again. I actually knew that he was there with me. And so
That's amazing.
I want other people to experience that, but I don't get to decide their timeline and I don't get to decide my role in it. So I view every person who comes here as a blessing and a high and sacred calling, right? So I get filled up by talking to you.
Yeah,
I'm
me as
you
well.
you're letting me talk about what God has done with a wretch like me. And now I'm a princess. Like, talk about promotion, right? I mean,
Well,
it
what
just,
using all of that you've learned, like what advice do you give the leaders that want to be like more compassionate or like mission driven in their culture, right?
so the
That have this calling to want to do that but feel like they can't.
yeah, so one of the things that I learned, and I think leaders, I think we can be guilty of this and in danger of this. We have to be really, really careful to make sure that we're bringing the right person to the table. Like,
Mm,
if you're one of the things I do with my staff, and the first time I did it, it was like 10 years ago, I was scared to death. I bring staff in and I go, okay, how am I doing well? And how can I do better? Like, what annoys the daylights out of you about me?
yeah.
Tell me, how can I serve you better? And so I've learned to go after my own blind spots.
Mm,
Okay. And then I take those blind spots to people I trust and to God. And I say, help me go after this because I want to love well. I don't want people to think I love well. I want to actually love well.
love well, yeah.
Right. So I think if leaders take a good, honest look at themselves, talk to their family, their friends, other leaders that they can trust, the people who work with them and for them, and say, give me an honest appraisal. And if you need to do it through an anonymous survey monkey because they're afraid to tell you the truth because you hold their paycheck, find a way. Do not relent. Find out how you're viewed and then go after it. And you know what, Nick?
Mm,
Some of it's not going to be true, but a lot of it,
right,
if repeated often enough, if it
right.
if it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And then give yourself permission to make mistakes, to change, and to pursue excellence.
Mm,
Excellence is pursuing the higher good while you stumble over the things that don't work and try to get them out of the way.
I
There's a
love it.
lot of things I'm not good at, and I know it. So I surround myself with people who are. And
I love it.
yeah, so I mean, leaders need to take a good hard look at themselves, but they need to not do it in isolation. Get rid of the ego. If you're a CEO or an ED, you are at the lowest possible position. You know how I know that? Because everything is your fault, right?
True
If
that.
the
True that.
toilet doesn't flush, it's Tammy's fault. And when
Yeah.
your staff knows that, and the people around you know that that's where you're coming from, you become safe. When you become safe, people want to invest in you. They want to partner with you. They want to serve with you, right? This isn't about our power or positional power. It's about the kingdom of heaven coming to earth. Whether that person knows Jesus or not is irrelevant. God's still God.
Right. Oh, I love it. What would you say, expanding on that, what's one misconception about nonprofit leadership, you wish could be erased permanently, right? Like, you've been in this world. What do you think, could be, should be erased?
I'd probably need more time to think about that to have a good answer. But the first thing that comes to my mind is I really would like us as nonprofits to really, really, really be friends.
I love it.
I think I've always had this thing inside of me, like, let's not be redundant. Let's utilize resources well.
Love it.
Let's be together. And I'm even at that place in my career where you can knock me down a peg or two. You can change my title. I don't care. I just want to find an answer for the industry I'm in right now, which is so
Right.
vulnerable and at risk. I want to I want to find a way to do this well and sustain it because we have more need, not less. And this isn't an indictment against other leaders. It's the way the systems are set up, right?
Right.
I would just love to see a true coalition of nonprofits just commissioning together. I would
Mm.
love to see that. And I don't think I'm the brains to do it, but I certainly have the heart and I would certainly be a part of it. I'm new to Lancaster County. And so it's been something, right?
Yeah.
I love it, but I'm not well connected yet because the
Right.
first almost 3 years of my leadership here were committed to the crisis and surviving.
Okay.
So I didn't get to
Okay.
do the typical Tammy thing, right?
Got it.
And I've started some of that, but I also would really love, and I don't know if there is anything like this, but a true place of connection for leaders. Like we have a lot of great organizations and there's a lot of stuff going on. But I do think if we're not careful, CEOs and executive directors of nonprofits are just isolated. And look at all of the
Absolutely.
challenges with churches and all the
Yeah.
stuff in the news, right? What happens when a leader's isolated?
Yeah.
you know so I think the isolation, and I don't feel isolated. I'm saying as people in ministry, in missions, like a nonprofit is a local mission whether they believe in God or
Right.
not,
Right.
right? So finding a way to really do that together, really do it together, not just apply for the same grant together, which
Right.
is a
Right.
start. So I don't know if that answers your question. You can edit
I
this,
love
but
it. Well, and kind of getting back to the passion that you have kind of around the servant leadership, like who has modeled that for you? Like where did you see that? Or
you
did
know
you just instinctively kind of grow it?
No, there's nothing instinctive in me about that. At least not at the time. I think, God was just so good to me about putting the right leaders around me. And then I always find the gaps, right? I find the trap doors. I find the places of weakness. I also find the places to do better. And
Mm.
so I started developing this idea along, like now it's popular to have a business mentor, right? Oh, this is
Right.
my mentor. But at the time that I was doing it, it was out of necessity. It was, I know I can't do this alone. Once I figured that out, it was clear to me. Then the next step was who's the right leader, and at first I thought I was going to be one person. Well, sometimes I've had as many as 4 mentors while I was in one organization.
I love it.
And I don't have a college degree. I have a couple years in college and I just started going back in 2023. My kids are grown. I'm a Grammy now. I have a little bit more time.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. But now I'm like 53. Is it even worth it? Right? And and I don't know. I still don't know. But what I do know is that I rely heavily on understanding what the organization needs,
Right.
and then trying to find people to help fill
Solving
those
that.
needs,
Yeah.
solving that need. So it's
What do
been
you
quite
what
a
do you think?
journey.
What do you think the best advice you've ever received from those mentors? Is there one that, really knocked your socks off?
There's two.
Oh, all right.
There's two. The first one is ask more questions. And the
Mm,
second one was take more time.
mm.
Take more time. I didn't realize earlier on that my love for the vulnerable created an urgency in me that could sometimes cause me to make mistakes that if I would have just slowed down a little bit, I could have prevented. They weren't earth
Okay.
shattering, but they were time wasting. And I did learn from them. So they weren't wasted, but I needed to learn to slow down. And so when a staff person or a person from the community comes in and they're all wired up and they're afraid, right? I can have that calming presence because I know that the answers will come. So it's ask more questions and
Mm,
slow down.
I love it. I love it. Well, and if you could leave our listeners with one challenge or kind of encouragement today, what would you say that would be?
Well, we've talked a lot about looking at your blind spots, right? We've talked a lot about mistakes and how to surround yourself with the right people and how to stop pretending and become.
Mm,
Wherever in your life you're pretending, and we all have pretend areas, right? But stop pretending and become, and be open to the idea that what you thought something was going to be may not be.
mm,
And when you become open to that, then there's no fear, there's no agenda, there's no, this is a total failure, there's no attachment to self-worth, right? It's all about, let me be present, let me find out where God is leading if they're led by God, and let me just go with that. I never thought that I was going to be pulled into this. I mean, raised in the projects of Syracuse, New York by a mentally ill mother, broken in every respect. I got all the shrapnel. And now I'm leading organizations for 30 years. Like, how'd that happen? But when I look at how I'm wired, I look at my experiences, I look at my passions, I look at how God's wired me, I don't see a better place for me.
right. I love it.
I just don't. And so there's a certain amount of trust in the blindness, right?
Mm,
I wasn't walking blind. I stumbled into every single job. You can go on the LinkedIn or Indeed or Monster or whatever. You can apply for 700 jobs. But if God doesn't want you to have that job, you're not getting it.
right.
So I just know that even if I'm in the hardest place in my life, if it's where God wants me, I'm in the safest place. I'm in the best
Right.
place, the place that'll bring him the most glory and do everyone else the most good. And I get changed in the process.
Mm, I love it. I love it. Tammi, I really appreciate you today. And folks, well, that as much as we'd like to continue, that's going to kind of wrap up another chapter here in Servant Leadership Library. And today, if it didn't inspire you to lead with a little more heart, a little more courage, and maybe a lot more coffee, I don't know what will. A huge thank you to Tammi for joining us and reminding us that servant leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about showing up, rolling up your sleeves, and believing in people even when the world hasn't caught up yet. If compassion had a KPI, Tammi would be exceeding it every quarter. If you've enjoyed today's episode, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss it next time. We'll pull another leadership gem off the shelf. And if you really loved it, share it with someone who could use a little inspiration, or maybe someone who needs a gentle nudge towards better leadership. You know who that is. So I'm Nicholas Paulukow, reminding you that great leadership isn't complicated. It's just not always easy. So keep learning, keep serving, and keep showing up for the people who count on you. Until next time, thanks for checking out another volume of Servant Leadership Library.